Welcome and thank you for your service. I want to start with a story. Back in college, I was an NCAA Division I athlete for 2 of my years, and I loved sports. And racquetball was one of the sports I really enjoyed, and I was in a tournament. We were in the finals, the championship, the finals of the tournament. And we were winning. I mean winning. And I went down low for a shot, knees bent. It was a beautiful form. I was gonna hit that ball. It was gonna be great. And then boom, my knee went out. Kind of blew out. And I let out a scream. It was a manly scream, yeah, but I let out a scream and it did hurt. Hurt a lot. And then in the days that followed, I had to learn to use crutches. And I had a friend that said, "Oh, if you think the injury was painful, you ought to wait till the surgery. It's going to be worse." I thought he was crazy because the injury hurt, right? Well, sure enough, when the surgery came, after the surgery, I was spitting up blood all night and I was in a lot of pain. It was so painful. And then I had a guy say, "If you think the surgery was painful, you ought to wait till rehab. It's going to be worse." I thought, man, you got to be crazy. And I will say this, if you don't go to the bathroom before rehab, you might accidentally go to the bathroom while you're in rehab. But anyway, the point is, when we left to go in country or we left for deployment, it was very painful. And we at least understood the pain, right? But when we came back, for a lot of us, it was far worse, much more painful. And that was confusing. Because while we were gone, we kept thinking, oh, when I get back, oh, it'll be great when I get back. And then we got back and it was more painful. And we didn't even understand where the heck or why or anything like that. And so down the street, there is a great guy that will help you accumulate wealth. I'm going to help you not lose wealth, not lose yourself, and not lose your family, okay? What goes up comes down. We call that gravity. What goes in will come out. I call that emotional gravity. What goes in will come out, period, end of story. How it comes out, that's the question. If good stuff comes in, good stuff goes out. If bad stuff or tough stuff or difficult stuff that from war or from being a cop or a fireman or whatever, if that goes in, it's going to come out. The question is, how will it come out? Okay? We can exercise, eat right. How about talking to the right people? Because, if we talk certain things to the wrong people, that can end up hurting us more. So wisdom in all this becomes very important. Here's a thought. If you never heal from what hurt you, you will bleed on people who did not cut you. It's just the way it is. If you never heal from what hurt you, you will bleed on people who did not cut you. In a way, we're all broken, okay? We're all imperfect. If you have a pulse, you're part of this wide world of people with a pulse who are not perfect. We've had tough stuff. Some of the tough stuff came from childhood. Some of it came from a divorce or difficult situation. And all of that adds up in our heart. We're all sort of broken, but will we choose to heal properly? That's the question. Take a look at this. Hey guys, I'm Dr. Wade Hampton of Hampton Mediation, and the thought for today is, did you know that at the place where you have a broken bone, if healed properly, it will be stronger than it was before? Is there a life lesson here? Maybe so. There's that saying that whatever doesn't kill you will make you stronger, and I don't like that saying, but there is some truth to that. There's another saying that says, let your misery, when healed properly, later become your ministry. And whether you're Christian or not, the point is, it still applies where let our brokenness and our pain, when healed properly, help others. And that's the point. So I encourage you, use your brokenness. Yes, try to heal properly, please. And then use that to help others in later years. I'm Dr. Wade Hampton of Hampton Mediation, and you have a great day. So if we're all a little bit broken, and if we will do the work to heal properly, then we will be stronger than we were before. We will not bleed on those who did not cut us, and we can use that brokenness later in life to help others. We repeat what we don't repair. I'm here to help provide you with tools for life to help you navigate post-deployment. But think of it a little bit bigger than just post-deployment, okay? What about navigate the challenges of life? Navigate the challenges of puberty, of high school. We have hurting teens, hurting so badly that we are having very bad results. And you know what I'm talking about. Or what about navigating the challenges of marriage? Honey, do I look fat in last year's jeans? Oh, baby, you look great. I mean, great. Now, if you don't answer that properly, we could be navigating the landmines. We could be navigating the challenges of something else. Here's a quote. Do the work others aren't willing to do, and you'll get the things others will never get. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. This is different. It's not easy. It's work, but it's worth it. You'll have the things others won't have, like your retirement fund when you retire, like your 20th anniversary celebration, like your kids not going to drug and alcohol treatment center because they were traumatized through divorce or whatever. All of this falls in the realm of the United States Air Force Comprehensive Airman Fitness Program. And if you look at the 4 pillars, mental, physical, social, and spiritual. And then those 5 little words underneath are care, commit, connect, communicate, and celebrate. So yeah, we're talking about thoughts, feelings, emotions, and relationships, but guys, stay with me because I want you to think of it in a little different way. I want you to think of it like tactical thinking, okay? Not really this kind of tactical thinking, but consider hand-to-hand combat. In hand-to-hand combat, what is your most powerful weapon? Is it your fists of fury? Is it your feet of fatality? Well, no, it's your brain. It's your brain. Think of the Army guy versus the CIA operative. The Army guy might say, hey, let's go blow it up or shoot it or something like that. The CIA operative, that man or woman has to be a little more tactical in their thinking because they may not have a gun or a knife or anything but their brain to get them through the challenging moments that they face. We want to put our minds to work in healthy, positive, tactical directions. You know, the very attitudes that kept us alive in country are now not helping us at all. We had to be tough. We had to be strong. We had to build up walls to survive that environment. But now that we're back home, those very attitudes, they may not be helping us at all. As a matter of fact, they might be causing us harm. And so why is all this so important? Why should we care? Well, it's very good to understand what we're up against. And you know what? America is a complicated place to live. I lived in the mountains of Central America. It was very challenging, but it was a simpler place to live, all right? And how about relationships? It's a difficult culture for relationships. You know, we wear seatbelts because what? There's a 93% chance we'll have a better result if we get in an accident, and yet we got a far higher percentage of us not making it through relationships via separation, divorce, and things like that. How we handle ourselves is very important. Here's a quote from Stephen Covey. I am not a product of my circumstances. I am a product of my decisions. Our choices will greatly affect us, the people around us, and our generations. We need to understand what we're up against to the best of our ability, although it's going to be difficult because these are rather intangible things that we're up against. We need to learn the tactics of survival in whatever environment we happen to be in. The teenager is in an environment in high school, which is not an easy place for a lot of our teenagers. The soldier is in a tough environment when they're in a forward operating base or when they leave that bit of security to go down the road in a Humvee, or a police officer, or fireman, or emergency medical personnel, or things like that. The pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects it to change, and the realist adjusts the sails. Good friend of mine, Navy SEAL, he said, All the planning in the world goes out the door at the first contact with the enemy. And so I asked him, you mean you guys don't plan? He said, oh, no, no, no. We take planning to levels you never even thought of. But having said that, we are constantly adjusting the sails, if you will. We need to learn to take good care of everything we value most, like yourself. A lot of us are very selfless people. We're always doing things for other people. But the truth is, if we don't take good care of ourselves with all the right stuff, eating right, exercising, getting out, being, friends with others, doing things together, all that, if we don't do it right, then sooner or later we won't be able to take care of our spouse and our family and our loved ones. But too, what about our possessions? We value them. If I had a Harley-Davidson motorcycle, I can assure you that would be a valued possession of mine. So all of this matters. Yourself, your spouse, your family, your friends, loved ones, and even your possessions like a motorcycle or a 401k or whatever. So why is post-deployment so difficult? Well, there's probably about 100 million reasons, from things like debt and marital issues and communication and all that. But there's also bigger issues like guilt, feeling really bad that you came home and your buddy didn't, or maybe you saw things that were tough or weren't right, they weren't fair, or you had to do some things that weren't easy to do. Now these attacks come to us a lot of times, these difficulties come to us a lot of times through our thoughts. And understanding the thoughts and where they come from, I think, is essential to survival for myself and for others, and I think for you too. 99% of all humanity think that there is a dark side. And from my education and experience, I have found that thoughts come from one of three places. Here's Bart Simpson with Bart in the middle and good Bart on one side and bad Bart on the other. And what I have found is that our thoughts come from you, God, or the devil. Now, however you want to slice and dice that with God or the devil or whatever, they come from one of three places. That's my experience and understanding. Here's one for you. Once upon a time, I thought I heard God say, "Thou shalt have a Harley-Davidson motorcycle." I thought sure that was God. Turns out it was just me. And if you're having haunting and confusing thoughts of the guilt or doing harm to yourself or someone else, I can assure you they're not coming from you. They're coming from the dark side or whatever you want to call that. And as soon as you understand that tactic of the enemy, within hours or days, it takes away that power. Once you understand that that's not you, that that's coming from somewhere else, it takes away the power, all right? So back to those haunting thoughts of guilt and things like that. Let me throw this out there. People with a conscience care, all right? I've worked with sociopath hitmen, people who committed mass murder, and also people who were very healthy in their thinking processes and got through all the difficult stuff much easier than others, all right? People with a conscience care. Sociopaths, they don't wrestle with these things because they don't have a conscience, they don't care. Now, where does that conscience tend to come from? Well, that's an interesting question, and I'm sure there can be multiple answers to that. But one thought is it comes from our Christian foundations, all right? We are or were a Christian nation, and whether we even know it or not, some of our thought processes and our foundational thinking comes from Christianity. But I've also found that misunderstandings of our Christian foundations can create problems. I'll give you a story, true story. We'll call this guy Bob. He was in prison, and I was his pastor, if you will, and provided counseling services and heard confessions and things like that. Bob, one day we were in counseling, and he said, "Dr. Wade, she hasn't forgiven me." I said, "Okay, Bob, why do you say that?" "Well, she hasn't forgiven me." "How do you know?" "Because she hasn't forgotten it." "Well, Bob, why does she have to forget it to have forgiven you?" "Well, the Bible says that God remembers our sins no more, and does she think she's better than God? If she hasn't forgotten it, she hasn't forgiven me." So I kind of gently tried to say, Bob, short of a serious brain injury, she's not going to forget it. And by the way, Bob, about five times in the Bible it says God remembers our sins no more. 2 of those it says he remembers them against us no more. 3 or so it says he remembers them no more. I think that's a metaphor, okay? And the only thing that really matters is that he remembers them against us no more. So let me throw this out there. If you steal $10,000 from me, I will forgive you, okay? I will forgive you. I don't want to be in bondage. I don't want to be in chains. I don't want to be in handcuffs to hatred. Fair enough? That would be like me drinking poison and hoping you are harmed. And I don't want that at all. I don't want it for myself. I don't want it for my loved ones. I don't want it for my dog. I like the dog. But you're probably not going to be my treasurer ever again. Period. End of story. Now, there's some people that use that, and they don't mean to, but they manipulate. Oh my gosh, if you were a good Christian, if you were a good human being, you would let me be your treasurer again. Oh, that's terrible. You should let me be your treasurer. Then you know you've forgiven. Guess what? No, heck no, and no. And a lot of people have these things very confused, and they manipulate. Some don't mean to. They just don't know better. Others do mean to. They know better, and they are not being nice people when they use these things to manipulate us to get what they want. All right? Now, here's a question. What if that person's close to you, a spouse, a family member, something like that? Well, that is more difficult. You can't say, hey, you've been a jerk, I'm going to throw you out. It takes a little more time and more wisdom and things like that. That's in the advanced course. There you go. All right. What does all this have to do with the challenges and tools for life? Well, when you were in country, you were trained to deal with the many threats that existed in that environment. But now that you're back home, the challenges are still very serious, but also very different. The truth is, we're losing more veterans back home than we did in country. And the result of that, the ripple in the pond effect of that, is enormous because it hurts loved ones, friends, families, children, grandchildren. It's not just a single isolated incident that occurs. The ripple in the pond becomes very big and very painful. You know, we're only as strong as our training and our habits. We've received excellent training for our deployment, and now that we're back home, we face complicated challenges that may be harder to see, harder to detect, harder to understand, and harder to deal with. And I just almost can't emphasize this enough. We understood the pain when we left. We understood the pain while we were gone. But this is something that's hard to see, detect, understand, and hard to deal with, okay? Let me throw out a few stories here that kind of help support these thoughts. I had a client one time who was an Army veteran, and he had shot and killed an adorable little 8-year-old girl between the eyes. And he drank a lot of vodka in the years that followed, and he was haunted by the confusing thoughts that came with that. But you know, there's more to the story. She had a live hand grenade in each hand. She'd already walked over to that bunch of his friends and killed and maimed some of those. And then she was walking towards him and his bunch of friends. And she shot her, he said, between the eyes and killed her. And he battled with those haunting and confusing and painful thoughts for many years. And as I worked with him to understand these concepts that I'm bringing you today, it was like 1,000 or 1,000,000 pounds was lifted off his shoulders. The tears started flowing. This was a tough guy. And I'm telling you, the tears started flowing. We went through boxes of Kleenex, and he was in a much better place. Here's another story. I'll call this guy the tunnel rat, because that was his job in Vietnam. Now, most people say that was the most painful, awfulest, horriblest job there was in Vietnam. They usually got little guys, and they give them a .45 caliber handgun and several magazines. I would want about 30 extra magazines with me, and they sent him in the tunnels to kill the enemy. And it was the gruesome job, and he had very, very difficult years that followed. haunting thoughts, nightmares, confusion, and everything. We worked through those issues, and using these principles, he felt about 1,000% better as we went through this. Here's another story, the halo jump. Former Navy SEAL. He was doing a training exercise down in Florida. Halo means high altitude, low open. Jumped out of an airplane very high in the air with oxygen on because the oxygen is very thin up there. Fell a long ways, opened his chutes as he got close to the ground. He opened his first chute and it didn't quite open. It went. He opened his second chute and it didn't quite open well. It went. It's estimated he hit the ground at 80 miles per hour. He spent the next 6 years, many surgeries, learning how to walk again unsupported. It was very difficult for him. He was bitter. He drank. I think he had a couple of divorces and tough times. And one more thing to add. We can have tough times from childhood issues, from a divorce, from whatever. Remember, what goes up will come down, and what goes in will come out. If we never heal from what hurt you, you'll bleed on people that didn't cut you. Here's another tool for life. Ready? I'm not God. I know that sounds funny, but here's the story. I knew a guy who felt called to become a police officer. He did. He kind of felt called to become a police officer, right? Well, he felt called to be a man of excellence, a good police officer, not a lousy one. And if God is all-knowing, if there was a shooting situation, well, that shooting situation was not going to sneak up on God. It's like, oh my gosh, son, we missed that one. 5 more minutes, darn it. Let's try to do better next time. That's not how it works with this God we're talking about. And so if God is all-knowing, and since I'm not God, then it's only my job to do my job to the best of my ability. Period. I mean, it's not time for a group hug when we're out there in a shooting situation. That would be doing my job very poorly. It's only my job to do my job to the best of my ability. End of story. You know, the generals do not expect us to be generals when we're only captains. And God doesn't expect us to be God when we're only human. All right? Here's a little example. Some say that the Vietnam War was an unjust war. All right? That's a good debate. Not for right now, but that's a good debate. And let's consider that. If it was an unjust war, then this guy here, President Johnson, he might answer for that. Or Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara, but not the soldier. Okay? Are you following that? Let me throw this little example on to put a little more weight behind it. Here's a nice 8-year-old girl. She's driving a car. Well, what if I started yelling at her? Evelyn, why can't you drive a car better? She would say, Papa, I'm 8. Get a grip. So the words age appropriate might fit here, right? I mean, that would just be crazy. We all can see that example so easily. How terrible to yell at this cute little 8-year-old girl. Why can't you drive a car better? I'm 8. Get a grip. Well, doesn't that also apply here? What about rank appropriate? You're not expected to do the stuff of generals or the President of the United States or McNamara. You're only expected to do your job to the best of your ability. And if you mess up, well, there's forgiveness too. But that's another deal, so we won't go there. All right, remember, it's good to understand the tactics of the enemy. All right, here's another tool for life, all right? Why do we suffer? This question plagues humanity. Why do bad things happen to good people? All that. And it's a great question. But I have some thoughts for you to think of, some answers for you to consider. Here's one reason why we suffer. It's persecution. Now, by the way, this could be unpacked into an hour or a day or a book. So we're going fast through this. But persecution. You go to the drug and alcohol community, they often tell the new people, hey, if you're going to try to change your life, you're going to have people that are going to try to sabotage you, and some of them don't even mean it. It's weird, but it happens. But let's keep it to a simpler example, okay? If you want to try to change your eating habits, I guarantee you somebody's going to come up and bring the most amazing birthday cake or bacon or whatever. Let me throw one little other example on here. How about if you've got a shoulder that's been blown out? Is it like a magnet? People are going to come up to you and hit you on the shoulder. How you doing? And you're like, for crying out loud, can't you see I'm in a sling? It's just how it works. It's weird, but it's there. And if you know this tactic of the enemy, then when it happens, maybe you won't be so freaked out or confused or whatever. All right, here you go. Another reason for suffering is carving and molding us into better people. Here's a picture of my son. This was at Darby Pass, Fort Benning, Georgia. He was in Ranger School, and he was walking out from phase 1. He had passed, and he had an 8 hours off. And I surprised him. I was there, and that's the smile on his face. And this is one of my favorite pictures on earth. And so, why in the world would any right-minded human being put themselves voluntarily into that kind of suffering? Because in Ranger School, they take you to the edge of being dead and bring you back. I asked a Navy SEAL friend of mine, I said, well, now which is worse, Ranger School or BUD/S? And he said, you know what, that's hard to answer, but I'll tell you what, nothing sucked more than Ranger School. And so the question again, why would someone put themselves through that kind of suffering voluntarily? Here's a little better picture of him when he got his expert infantry badge, which wasn't easy to get either. So, why did he do that? Well, think of this. How to handle suffering. I will endure the present suffering because I have the end in mind. Okay? In Tyler's case, he wanted to become a better soldier. In my case, I wanted to become a better man. How about the person who has braces? Well, that's painful, I am told. And so why would they voluntarily go through that kind of suffering? Because they're going to love the smile in the mirror when it's over. And in my case, when I went through that suffering, I had the end in mind. Okay? I want to be a better man. I want to be a better father. I want to be a better husband. Things like that. And if I will heal properly, then maybe God will use me to help others at the other side of this very painful, difficult time that I'm going through. All right? I want to become a better person. That's what helps. Remember, it hugely helps when we understand these tools for life. How about another reason for suffering? Well, the consequences of our bad choices. Remember these sayings, what goes around comes around, or you reap what you sow. You know, if you put corn in the ground, you're probably going to get corn. You put beans in the ground, you're probably going to get beans. Fair enough? It's just how it is. Know this, you are free to choose, but you're not free from the consequences of your choices. Our choices greatly affect us, the people around us, and our children and our generations. I got another one for you. This was a little bit sad, but also it helped this guy a lot. I was in counseling with a patient one time, and he said, Dr. Wade, why did God kill my father? Well, how did your father die? He died of cancer. What kind of cancer? It was lung cancer. Did he smoke? Oh, yeah, he smoked 3 packs a day all his life. Smoked like crazy. Well, what if it's not God's fault? What if it's our fault? I'm going to throw this out here, and I know it may be tough, but we certainly wonder, why cancer? Why these things? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are sowing cancer unto ourselves with our food supply. We're eating things from boxes that have very little nutrition. We're eating things from boxes that have very little enzymes to help move through the body. And by the way, if things don't move through the body properly, you're going to have more problems. We've got pesticides, microwaves, plastics, and things. We are sowing cancer unto ourselves, and we're reaping cancer. That one right there, this can explain a lot of man's pain and suffering if we were to have time to unpack it. That's in the next course. Let me throw this out here. I knew a guy that went 10 miles out to sea, metaphorically speaking. Now, he was a good kid, and he was approaching his 16th birthday, and the fumes got to him. You know the fumes, perfume and gasoline fumes? Exactly. And then he started kind of going downhill in the next few years and then went to college. And there was a Trinity on one side and a Trinity on the other. Well, there was the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit on one side and the sex, drugs, and rock and roll on the other. So you know which one he chose, and he got in a boat. And it was like a party boat. It was a party boat for quite a while, but it got to be where it was not a party anymore. It got to be where it was rather painful. And when he finds himself 10 miles out to sea and it's terrible out there, he cries out and says, God, why did you leave me? And he says, I didn't leave you. You left me, but I'd love for you to come back. And you know what? That guy thought sure God was going to send a helicopter out to get him. But he didn't, because what goes around comes around and you reap what you sow. So he had gone 10 miles out. He had to row 10 miles back. But you know, there's one other little interesting factor involved. While he was heading out to sea, he acquired some bad habits. You know bad habits. Let's call them bondages. Is it an addiction? Is it a disease? Whatever the heck it is, let's call it a bondage. Because I think that's a word we can all agree on. And let me tell you what a bondage is. It's like being wrapped with a little string, or you're in chains, or you're enslaved by this habit. Think of smoking, okay? And imagine a string the size of dental floss, and it's wrapped around you. Just wrapped around you a little bit, that's all. Not too much. Dental floss wrapped around. And if it's wrapped around a few times, well, that's not that hard. We can handle that. But when it wraps around thousands of times, because you've been smoking one puff at a time for years, then that's hard to break, because you are in bondage. You are wrapped with a little string thousands of times. Now what else? What other bondages could be out there? Well, cursing, damn it. That's a bad habit to break. And a lot of us started it when we were, 10, 11, 12? I don't know. You've got smoking. You got drinking. You got drugs. How about some sexual things? It's a bondage that we acquire, a bad habit that is hard to break. All right? Fair enough? Little string wrapped around thousands of times, hard to break. So let's summarize. We're here to help you not lose wealth, not lose yourself, and not lose your family. PTSD, it's very real, okay? America is a complicated place to live. Relationships are difficult. The mind is the battlefield. We need tactical thinking for the environment that we're in, whatever environment that is. Remember too, you are not God, and God doesn't expect you to be God when you're only human. There are certain tools for life that are very important. Like properly or a healthy understanding of forgiveness, a healthy understanding of your thoughts, where they come from, healthy understanding of why we suffer. And if we will lock down these healthy thought patterns, it's going to be easier to get through the hard times. And if you have a pulse and if you live long enough, you're going to have hard times. It's just how it works. You know what? I can endure this present suffering because, or if, I have the end in mind. Okay? Remember that our choices greatly affect us, ourselves, the people around us, and our generations. And let's end with this United States Air Force Comprehensive Airman Fitness Model. Mental, physical, social, and spiritual. And I think of that a little bit like this. That's a baby's mobile that hangs over the baby's crib. And if you were to take scissors and cut one of those strings, it would throw the whole thing off balance. And that's kind of how I view these: mental, physical, social, and spiritual. When we have them all working well, we are in balance. We're doing much better. Remember, we are all a work in progress. And you know what? If it doesn't challenge you, then it probably won't change you. And I got to tell you that if you decide to make changes and learn from the material that's been presented to you here, well, it might not be easy. It might feel awkward. It dare say that it probably will be difficult and it will feel awkward, but I also say that it's worth it to you, the people around you, your children, your generations, and so on. Take a look at this. Hey guys, I'm Dr. Wade Hampton, and the thought for today is be brave enough to be bad at something new. You know, I spent several hours today out at the Rosecrans Airfield with some folks from the 139th Airlift Wing, and you know, this image really pulls at my heart because I have bad days, but it's humbling when you think about some of the tough days that other people have. And I guess the message is, let's be brave enough to step out of our comfort zone, try something new, and if it's new, we're probably not going to be great at it at first, but I think as we go through life, we'll look back, and it was a little more exciting, a little more fun, a little more imaginative and challenging when we're brave enough to step out of our comfort zone and try new things. I'm Dr. Wade Hampton, and you have a great day. May the obstacle that frustrates you be a ladder to help you climb higher and see farther. I want to thank you for your time and your service. I hope this material changes your life, your children's lives, your grandchildren, and the people around you. All right? I'm Dr. Wade Hampton, and you have a great day.